Training without follow through rarely sticks, and coaching creates consistency that helps leaders actually implement what they learn. And organizations often are investing heavily in the training, but what about that ongoing support? And without the ongoing support, leaders can tend to struggle to apply what it is they have learned. So, what do we do about this? How do we ensure that training sticks and translates into lasting hires? And that's what we want. Well, a lot of times leaders are promoted quickly and they don't necessarily even have the training on interviewing and hiring. And this is can result in a lot of stress for the hiring manager because they're juggling a lot of new challenges at once, managing a team. Without the training, and maybe sometimes even learning a new product if they've been promoted maybe into a different division. And then sometimes they are thrown right into hiring, either backfilling a role or building out a team. And it's a lot of change to manage all at once. And this is a challenge that comes up that I often hear about, which is that a lot of times leaders don't feel comfortable raising their hand and saying, I need some help here. I don't really know the hiring process. I don't know what to do exactly in the interview process. I don't even really know what questions to ask. And even tenured leaders that maybe they have been promoted from leading a team of individual contributors to now leading second line in a second line leadership role where they're now leading managers and they have a position to backfill. Well, the questions that they want to ask candidates that for leadership roles are different than what they want to ask for individual contributor roles. So a lot of times they don't have those tools and or feel comfortable knowing or feel comfortable speaking up and saying, hey, I need some help here. Or maybe they don't necessarily know who to go to, or maybe they do know who to go to, but their executive leadership team is very busy too. So all of these challenges that new leaders and newly promoted leaders deal with can lead to delays in the hiring process. And the research shows that these delays can be costly. So it's not just bad hires that can lead to expensive cost at loss in revenue, but also delays in the interview process can exceed up to $500,000. Research shows, and you're looking at the time that the vacancy is open, and then once you do finally get somebody in place, you've got the onboarding and the ramp up, and then you've got the stress on your team, and so this is all leading to slower execution, so delays in the process, and the hiring market is competitive. So not just for the candidates trying to get the job, but I've been recruiting for, this is my 10th or 11th year now. And when I first started recruiting, I could reach out to, well, we'll just say the number of candidates that needed to reach out to present 8 to 10 qualified candidates was a third of what it is today to present half as many qualified candidates. So what that says to me is that it is a candidates market, and for whatever reason, and it has been for a long time now. And so it's the hiring process is now competitive for companies, and the candidate that you want is also wanted by other companies and other opportunities. If they've got the contacts, they've got the wins on the board, they've got the right personality fit for your organization and or team culture, they're going to be wanted and by other organizations too, likely your competitors. And so we do want to have a streamlined, buttoned up process with solid communication, and so that we're giving the candidate a positive experience throughout. And so what are some of the common challenges that I see leaders and or new leaders dealing with? So both tenured and new leaders struggle with these challenges in the hiring process. So one I mentioned already, not knowing what questions to ask. And so just having as part of the playbook for your team, these are the interview questions that you want to ask. And of course, you can expand on that, but equipping your leadership team with these tools at the start can help. And also can really help support them in ultimately making the right hire and alleviating some of that stress in the process, but also how to spot when there is a red flag, a potential concern, how to act on it, what steps to potentially take to see if the candidate can overcome that red flag. And also I mentioned a moment ago, providing candidates a positive experience. So this includes something as simple as setting candidates up for success in the interview process. Let them know, this goes back to the communication, how they can best prepare. Give them timely feedback and timely follow-up. And also something as simple as give candidates multiple interview times and dates. And a lot of times sometimes leaders are very good about this. And other times they'll say, we just get one time and date option for the candidate. And it's not that the leader isn't trying to consider the candidate, it's that they're busy navigating all of their other responsibilities, leading their team, putting out fires, attending meetings, trying to figure out and navigate the interview and hiring process, following up with candidates and with recruiters. It's a lot to manage. And so when they get that 30-minute or 1-hour block on their calendar, maybe they're excited to offer that to the candidate. We have to keep the candidate in mind that they have likely their current current role that they need to prioritize. So just little things like this that can be little important details that can be overlooked in the process and slow the process and result in less than optimal candidate experience. And that can sometimes result in candidates falling out of the process, and then you're starting the process over again. So all of these missed potential opportunities for solid process, solid communication can contribute to these delays in the process. And another one that I see a lot of is failing to leverage team members in the interview process. So what I mean by this is sometimes when we get overwhelmed just as humans, we can sort of shut down and just kind of freeze up. I don't know what to do. I have so much on my plate. I don't even know where to start. And I've seen tenured leaders freeze up in the interview process, and they just don't start engaging candidates. They don't start the interview process, sometimes for weeks, sometimes even a month or even longer. And we talked about it's a competitive hiring process, competitive market. And candidates if they're not engaged quickly and then they don't and consistently, they're more likely to fall out of the process. And even if a candidate, let's say they're happy in their current role, which is a great candidate, we typically want candidates that are not looking, they're not running away from anything, they're doing well, and your opportunity just happens to be a good opportunity. So then they start engaging. Well, then human nature, naturally, that candidate starts to get curious. And so maybe they weren't open to opportunities, but now they are. So now it becomes more of a competitive process. So we want to keep that engaged. Sorry, back to leveraging team members. So when we feel overwhelmed, if a leader is freezing up, not starting the interview process, or maybe they're not freezing up, they just can't start the process for 2 weeks because they've got vacation, or they've got the team meeting, or they've got to travel for a client meeting. All very important initiatives. Well, who on the team can they lean on for support so that we can go ahead and get the process started? So maybe, for example, there is a strong individual contributing team member that the manager can enlist to start the first interview, do a 30-minute phone interview and give the candidate information on real day in the life of the role. And this can then help elevate the confidence of the hiring manager if the individual contributing team member feels like they're a good fit. Well, then you feel more confident as a leader investing your time and in interviewing this candidate, and you've also started the process. And as soon as you have a solid candidate, that's when you want to start the process. You want to get them engaged and you want to keep them engaged. And by knowing who to go to on your team, also your leadership team, maybe somebody on your leadership team is really strong in self and social awareness, and they're good at picking up any potential concerns. And maybe you're not flagging any concerns, but you want to elevate your confidence with every step in the interview process. So maybe you bring them in. So it's knowing who to go to, who to lean on, how to leverage your resources to help you better prioritize your time. So for example, if you're strong in one area, we're not strong in all areas. So the area that you are maybe weaker in, likely there's somebody else on your team of individual contributors or on your leadership team that can help you in the interview process. So who can you pull from to help keep the process moving while lightening your load? And these are not things that leaders are necessarily going to be thinking about when they're navigating all of these challenges. So let's look at some specific examples. A lot of times, case studies from straight from my experience in the field. So a lot of times you may have a superstar individual contributor sales rep, let's say, for example, that gets promoted into leadership. So I was working with a a new leader, and so super strong individual contributor, newly promoted to lead a team, and he was juggling a lot. So this was a new startup division. So not only was this new leader learning a new product and a new space and managing a team, he was also tasked with building out the team. So there were multiple roles to fill. So this is so much stress and change that this new leader is trying to adapt to. And he ultimately froze in the interview process and just wasn't uh, doing any interviews. So how could some coaching support have helped this new leader? Well, one, going through the process with him and helping him first mapping out what the process is going to look like. Then here's the playbook of these are the kinds of questions that you want to ask initially, and here's what you're looking for in a strong candidate. These are some flags that you want to watch out for. And also time blocking. Here's how you can better prioritize your time so you're less overwhelmed and you're actually moving the needle. And then here's how you can better leverage your team, your leadership team, your team of individual contributors when you are feeling a bit overwhelmed, and to help you go ahead and get the process started. And I've seen this freezing up as well with experienced leaders who shut down when they just feel overwhelmed, too much on their plate. I got this feedback before. I have too many candidates. So while this is a good problem to have, it can also be stressful. And the challenge here was there was a lapse. I don't know if lapse is the right word, but there wasn't effective communication. So finally, I was able to pull from the leader what it was that was stressing him and keeping him from starting the process. So he had a lot of candidates, but he wasn't confident. He didn't have enough information about the candidates to feel confident in investing his time, blocking out his time to start the interviews, because there was a key piece of information that he needed about the candidates, but he hadn't communicated this. So it's simple details like this that if the leadership team has training and a coach that or a consultant that can help support them and say, okay, what is it that's truly frustrating you or distracting your focus right now or stressing you out? Okay, so then once we have identified the problem, then we can implement a new step or get a process of a way that we can have clearer communication, and then you can get the information that you need from your recruiter on the candidates up front, and this is going to alleviate some of that stress for you. So that's what we did, and then we got the process started, ultimately had a successful hiring initiative there. But this was a major delay in the process, and it was all due to stress on the leader. Another quick case study example, and then we'll talk about the research, and then we'll talk about some solutions. So this was a big communication gap at the executive level. So I was working with the executive leadership team, recruiting for an executive level candidate. And this candidate was already leading a team of 20 individuals, and he was heading into for his current role. So we were heading into the final interview, and he received an email on how he could prepare what the expectation deliverable was for the final interview. And so the candidate called me and he said, Amy, I've had such a positive experience with this organization, with this leadership team. I feel like I would work really well with the organization and with my direct report. But what they're asking me to do to prepare for this final interview next week, if I didn't have a team that is of 20 that's already currently counting on me, I would be able to deliver this. And the deliverable, the ask was, he was sent 30 journal articles to read and prepare for discussion coming into the final interview. He said, I can't do it. I don't have the time, and I don't feel comfortable asking for more time or saying that I can't do it. So I think it's best if I just pull out of the process. Now, of course, executive level roles can be super challenging to find that right candidate. So when you do, you really want to have your communication standards and your process buttoned up and in place so that it is a positive experience for the candidate, so that we don't lose candidates. And I had a strong relationship with my internal contact at the organization and with the candidate, because that's how I work. I keep close as best as I can communication with the candidates and with the leaders that I'm working with, so that I can navigate these challenges as we move through the process. And I said, give me just a little time. He was a little hesitant to let me go ahead and take time to reach out to my contact and see if I could get some clarification. And thankfully, he was fine with that ultimately. And I did connect with my internal contact, and it was just a miscommunication. She said, "Oh, no, Amy, he doesn't need to read all and prepare all 30 journal articles. Just have him, he can just pick a few." So this little detail is huge, and it made us it resulted in us almost losing our star candidate. So I cleared up the miscommunication, and ultimately the candidate prepared for the interview and he got an offer. But had we lost him without the opportunity to clear up that communication, and backing up or zooming out a little bit, when you have a streamlined process with clear communication, clear steps set up beforehand. So, for example, an email template to help candidates and communication with the recruiter to help candidates best prepare, and any questions that are not cleared up before starting the process is going to save time and stress for everybody involved, the leader, the recruiter, the candidate, and then the process is going to move more quickly. And of course, that's going to help organizations save on their bottom line. And the research shows that training alone is going to often fades over time, where when you have the coaching, this provides accountability and ultimately helps leadership team members or trainees sustain behaviors as new practices. This happens. I mean, we can use, in addition to the research that's out there, you can just take your own personal experience. Whenever we're trying to implement a new habit, this takes consistent focus and accountability. And this is why a lot of times we lean on coaches, unless we're somebody that is a really good patient. Often doctors will say, they don't follow their own advice. They're not a good patient. So it's important to recognize when we can be accountable, hold ourselves accountable, and when we need accountability, when we need coaching and support. And coaching also helps, research shows, to improve adaptability and coping and resilience under stress during critical initiatives such as the hiring. Hiring is one of the, if not the most important job of a leader. And when they don't have that, why not give them that additional support? Why not invest in that additional support to help them in their most critical initiative? And so we've talked about some of the challenges and why it's important to not only equip, arm, prepare your leadership team with a repeatable framework. And so build a repeatable framework, or take a look at, if you do have a current documented process in place for interviewing and hiring, what's working, what's not working, where do we need some improvement, where we can develop a repeatable framework. And this way leaders have a clear and consistent process that they can lean on every time they have a new hire. So this way they're not reinventing the wheel, they're not skipping steps when they get overwhelmed and busy. So have that process in place and train on the process, and also on the communication standards. I mentioned a few of the examples I mentioned dealt specifically with miscommunication or inefficient communication. And this leads to so much stress and costly time delays in the hiring process. Of course, sometimes bad hires as well. But we want to be able to set clear expectations for how candidates are engaged, who is involved in the process, how we're going to follow up with candidates to ensure that they have a positive experience and help to prevent that miscommunication. And also a process on, I mentioned how to leverage team resources. So knowing who's good at what, knowing who in your team to pull in at which stage in the process, or when this happens, I'm going to bring in this person. If I can't start the interview process, here's who I go to help me get the process started. So this way the candidate is engaged. And then also equipping your team with practical tools and action steps. For example, what to do next sort of guides. Okay, when this happens, or if I have this red flag showing up with a candidate, this potential concern, here's a step that I can take to help see if we can overcome that concern. Here's how we can pivot, how we can combine steps if we need to speed up the interview process so that we're not skipping steps. So there's so many little details that if they are documented and into a process where you have a repeatable framework and you've got solid communication in place, and your leadership team has this process, this playbook, and then they're also trained on it, but then they also have that ongoing coaching and support throughout, can really help take alleviate some of the stress that leaders are dealing with during their most critical initiative, and which is hiring. And that's what I help with. So training is essential, absolutely, but the research shows that training alone ultimately fades, and coaching sustains confidence, consistency, and ultimately better hires. And if you want a hiring process that leads to engaged candidates and confident leaders ultimately making lasting hires, then I invite you to reach out. My name is Amy Miller. I help leaders make lasting hires with less stress, and my contact information is in the description below. And then there are also links if you are curious and would like to learn more about my coaching and consulting. And if you got some value from the video, I invite you to please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.